Monday afternoon, too. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Browns signed an offensive lineman. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi. His thoughts on the Browns through the first few hours of free agency.
Surprise, except for the fact that the activity on the offensive line has been slow. What I'm noting is that there are no other real centers available after Linderbaum now. So maybe they're content to stick with Luke Whippler, but the left tackle, Rashid Walker, is the one to watch. Surprise, except for the fact that...
We'll continue to talk a little bit about the offensive line a little bit later. Pete Smith will join us, as will Emory Hunt from CBS Sports. Tyvis Powell on what he expects from the Browns in free agency.
I think the Browns they're probably going to be late to the party on this one. I mean, Andrew Berry came out already and said that, next year is the year that they're going to spend a lot of money and make their big splash in free agency. So I'm not really anticipating a lot. I'm hoping that they do something with the offensive line just to have some more clarity so we can know kind of where they want to go with that pick at 6. Because right now, as it stands, I think they're going to take an offensive tackle. But obviously, if they make some moves, I think that, that might switch and they might go for a wide receiver. The draft is the only place where you can get top talent for cheap price.
So the Browns did sign Zion Johnson, and we'll talk more about that. We'll see if that impacts what they do at 6. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi, what he thinks the Browns will do with the 6th pick in the first round.
With the 6th pick. In the 2026 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select left tackle Monroe Freeling out of Georgia.
Yeah.
That is a seismic reach.
Yeah, well.
By all accounts, why on earth did you go with this pick here?
This will change after this week of free agency. As I said, if they sign a left tackle, this will be significantly different. But I want it on record that at least one of my mock drafts, I'm picking Freeling. Because I think it's still possible, Riz, if they don't get
a left tackle.
Yeah, they're going to have to take an offensive tackle with that first pick if they don't get one in free agency.
So far, no tackle, but they did get a guard. All right, Jonathan Jones, CBS Sports, talking about one of those quarterbacks that's out there, Tua Tagovailoa.
$1.3 million, that's what they will be on the hook for. And then the Miami Dolphins will still be on the hook for all of that money minus just a measly $1.3 million. So that's how much money Tua is going to sign with a new team for in the coming days. You have to imagine that he's probably going to be getting out of the AFC East. A lot of cold weather teams, open air stadiums. We know that he struggled in the cold. You look elsewhere, there aren't that many starting jobs that are available. Tua, with his injury history, with his reputation around the league, with his poor play down the stretch, I don't know that he's going to walk in anywhere and assume a week 1 starting role. But is he a viable backup if he fits into the team, into the locker room culture? If that team is not playing in Buffalo every week, right? Or in frostbite conditions in Kansas City. So you start looking around, okay, dome teams, warm weather teams that typically play against teams in domes or in warm weather, and you start to narrow down the list, right, up to about half the NFL, maybe a third of the NFL. I would keep maybe somewhat of an eye on the Atlanta Falcons.
Jonathan Jones just talked Tua Tagovailoa into the Arena League. All right, we'll see. Atlanta, that's Kevin Stefanski, so we'll see. Again, plenty more with the Browns coming up. Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report, Emory Hunt from CBS Sports will join the show in just a couple minutes. Let's turn our attention to the Cavs yesterday. Hosting the Celtics for the first game in a few, and it was a tough one. The Cavs did get out to a really good start, though. Sam Merrill to Evan Mobley for the dunk. Cavs scored the first 7. And not much else went right then. Jason Tatum gets the layup as Tatum playing really well. And then coming back the other way, Jaylen Brown, the three-pointer. Celtics build up a 9-point lead, 35-26. Second quarter, Celtics get the rebound, and in transition, Schneiderman will throw it down for the dunk. 44-28, Celtics led at that point. And the Celtics pretty much on cruise control. They defeat the Cavs 109-98. Cavs will face the 76ers tonight at home in Rocket Arena. Time for us to take a quick time out on the side of the break. Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report is up first talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. So the Browns have agreed to a 3-year, $49.5 million contract with Zion Johnson. Was the 17th overall pick in 2022 of the Chargers. $32.4 million of that will be guaranteed. Let's welcome in Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Pete, what do you know about Johnson? What are your thoughts on the signing?
Well, I would describe the signing as sort of aspirational because, on the one hand, he has elite athleticism. He has everything you could possibly want in a guard. He would be an elite athlete at tackle if he was just a little bit taller. But he has long arms, wide base, incredible agility, explosion, all those things. He's been incredibly durable. He's played almost 4,500 snaps for the Chargers. He's got experience both at right and left guard. But the issue for him is he just hasn't been that good to this point. And some will argue that this was his best season, which it better be, considering what the Browns are paying for him. And that's ultimately the rub here, is there's a risk. On the one hand, the Browns are getting somebody with a lot of things that make a lot of sense for them. They need offensive line help, but they are betting highly that they are going to get more out of him than the Chargers did. And they're paying him to not just be a pretty good player. They're paying him to be a very good player for them on the offensive front.
So it sounds a little bit like they're projecting him similar to Howard, who they traded for.
The only difference here is that Zion Johnson is 26, which is critical. 3-year deal would put him right to about to be 29, which is theoretically going to be his athletic peak. So on that standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, you are adding two players that were arguably the best player on bad offensive lines, which isn't necessarily the place you want to be, but still, they have some fundamentals that they seem to be following on this, and it may work out for them, but obviously the key here is they can't be done. We'll see what happens with Joe Bitonio, but they've still got 3 spots to fill. All
right, so other free agent news for the Browns. Former Browns linebacker, now former, Devin Bush has reached an agreement, 3-year, $30 million deal that includes $21 million guaranteed with the Chicago Bears. So Devin Bush headed to the Bears. Not surprised. I kind of thought he played himself out of the Browns' price range with the way he played last year.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, this is what you want. He had a great season. I think you can make a compelling argument he should have gone to the Pro Bowl and all that. But there's a case to be made that he just had his best year he's ever going to have. And the Browns are paying for, what are you going to do for me in the future? And now, not what you did for me last season. And they have a fantastic linebacker in Carson Schwessinger. Mike Rutenberg, in his introductory press conference, name-dropped multiple guys I think the Browns are going to look at that can replace Bush and do it at a significantly cheaper rate. The guy that jumps out to me is Quincy Williams, who was an all-pro with Mike Rutenberg when they were with the Jets in 2023. He's not going to cost you very much, and that's the thing. They need to find the next Devin Bush, because people may forget that they signed Devin Bush as a guy that had been a former first-round pick by the Steelers, spent a year with the Seahawks, and then the Browns just sort of went like, okay, we'll see what he can do, and this is the result. So this is a good process for them, and that money can be used for better things. It's a shame to lose good players, but if you're going to lose them, in this case for Bush, you're happy that the guy's going to get paid for it.
All right, so also a name that a lot of people connected to the Browns, Tyler Linderbaum, did in fact set the record deal for pay for a center. The Raiders signed him to a 3-year, $81 million deal that includes $60 million guaranteed. Makes him not only the highest paid center, the highest paid interior offensive lineman in NFL history. So that's $27 million a year, $20 million a year guaranteed. I understand why you bowed out at about 20-some million, but that's good for Linderbaum. He's good.
I mean, this is the thing, and so much of a free agency, in particular this early tampering period, is restraint. Don't get so far into this thing that you're paying out $27 million for a center, and maybe it's going to be worth it for the Raiders. They have the money to do that. They're going to bring in Fernando Mendoza. That's fine. The Browns are not in a position to pay $27 million per season for a center, and they shouldn't be in that business. They need to get bang for their buck, and I find it very difficult to believe that there's a world where Linderbaum is going to provide them $27 million of value per season. So it's disappointing that they don't get the top of the line center, which could be really good for what they need in terms of reconstructing the next line. But they have to be smarter with how they pay out their money. And so often we look at this and we go, who are the winners of free agency? Well, in 2 years, they're usually the teams that are dumping all these guys, and they didn't win very many football games when it mattered.
All right, another guy that keep an eye on, Albert Breer tweets this out. The Commanders guard, Chris Paul, not the basketball guy, appears to have priced himself out of Washington. They list Cleveland as a team that's interested. Full-time starter for the first time 3 weeks into his fourth pro season. So it'll be interesting to see. What are your thoughts about Paul?
Very similar story as Zion Johnson without nearly the sort of first-round credibility. He has not been very good in most of his career, but this past season was an extremely effective pass protector, not a very good run blocker. So obviously this is going to be a deal where what is the price? As Breer's sort of alluding to, that idea of he got what? Maybe that's real at this point, or maybe Zion Johnson sort of took that deal in front of him. Unclear, but yeah, I mean, it's trying to get guys before they hit the market or as they're hitting the market and trying to get their best play in front of them. Will it work? Unclear, but it's all about risk reward, and the Browns are clearly aggressive on trying to address the offensive line, but it's hard to believe that all of these things are going to hit at the same time.
Who are some? You mentioned Williams is one name. Who are some guys you're listening to that you think might make sense for the Browns? It doesn't have to be offensive line, just free agents to kind of keep an ear out for.
Well, like I know Tony Grossi's talking about Rasheed Walker. I'm way more interested in Braxton Jones, who's a free agent tackle. I'm interested in Elijah Vera Tucker as guard. The Packers just released Elgton Jenkins officially. He's got medical flags, but again, these are the type of guys that make sense. Luke Fortner, the center out of Jacksonville, could be a guy since that market is being picked pretty clean, or Lloyd Cushenberry. And then beyond that, the big question is going to be tight end. Where are they going to go from here with my dream stash of Charlie Kolar going away and Daniel Bellinger having been signed, and seeing where some of those guys, but they also just lost agreed in principle with Cameron Jordan. Are they going to find another edge rusher? Are they going to just draft one of those? So offensive line's obviously the biggest focus. And then the other part that's going to take place is start of the league year, which people haven't really sort of figured out here, is that like a whole bunch of these quarterbacks are about to hit the market. Remember, a lot of these teams have sort of announced their intent to release these guys, but haven't actually done it yet, and they're going to release them on the first day of the league year, unless some team comes trading late. So the Malik Willis thing could have an impact on what Arizona does. Is Jacoby Brissett going to still be there? That's a guy that could make sense for the Browns. Is Geno Smith going to get released? He could make sense for the Browns. There's a lot of those guys, Kyler Murray, some of these others, that are suddenly going to hit the market, and that's when those guys are going to really enter play for teams, including the Browns.
All right, so another elite edge rush headed to the AFC North over the weekend. Raiders agreed to trade five-time Pro Bowl defensive end Max Crosby to the Ravens in exchange for the Ravens' 2026 and 2027 first-round picks. Trade can't be processed until next week, but it is in place, and Crosby is the Ravens' 2 first-round picks going back to Las Vegas. And Pete, it's the first time the Ravens have traded their first-round picks for a player in their existence since they basically took the Browns from Cleveland. But Crosby, what are your takeaways from Crosby, the Crosby trade, relative to the Ravens? I mean, they seem to be going all in.
Max Crosby is a terrific football player. He's not only a good pass rusher, though that hasn't been as great recently, but he's a really, really good run defender. And that's something the Ravens need to get both of from that position because they've just been lacking from the edge. I question giving up that much for him at this point. He's about to be 29 and 30 at this point, and he's dealt with injuries. He's also played a ton of snaps, but he may prove to be durable and make it long-lasting. Now, the key for them is they have to be good this year. They have to pay that off immediately. The other element, which I find really interesting about why the Ravens were willing to do this, is this year, more than a number of years in recent memory, they have more holes to address than they've had. And obviously, edge rusher has been one that's plaguing them for a while. But whether it's corner, whether it's things they've got to address on the offensive line, obviously center now. They just signed John Simpson to help one of their guard spots, but like linebacker's a question. They've got a lot of things to sort of figure out, and they still have Lamar Jackson's contract to work out. So on the one hand, it's a great player, and if you're the Browns, you don't want to see great players in your division. On the other hand, there is this sort of weird element where you're sitting there looking at this, and you're waiting to see how the Ravens sort of figure it out.
The other thing is now you've got Myles Garrett, T.J. Watt, Max Crosby all in the AFC North. Heck, if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you better go get some offensive line help to try to keep your quarterback healthy and upright.
Well, I mean, that's the name of the game with all these people is every team needs to get as much offensive line help as they can get. The Ravens have questions. The Bengals, we'll see what they do with Orlando Brown, if they're going to keep him or move on from him. The Steelers, questions with Broderick Jones coming off injury. And the Browns, we're living through it, where they're trying to find 5 new guys to come in and fix this thing. So there's a lot of pressure there, and that's why you're willing to pay out for these guys, because they are game changers.
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I can step aside to a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about wide receiver as well as tight end. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, talking about receivers he thinks the Browns may be interested in.
Dobbs would be up there. Alec Pierce is the best. They're not going to get him.
I didn't even mention him.
Yeah. Again, this Keon Coleman, former high second-round pick who's been a flop in Buffalo, is available. That sounds like the kind of guy that Andrew would go after. You know, he might have liked them in the draft. And
Right.
thinks that
What
changes
about
scenery.
Harrison or
Marvin Harrison, Brian Thomas Jr.? For a while, it was Brian Thomas Jr., but it appears Jacksonville is going to hold on to him.
Right.
And the same is true for Arizona. Why would an new offensive-minded head coach who's going to get a quarterback and might get Jeremiah Love in the draft, why would he give up their best receiver? So I don't see it happening.
Well, and Alex Pierce has agreed to a historic 4-year, $114 million deal to remain in Indianapolis. Makes him the highest paid receiver in NFL history. $84 million of it is guaranteed, $60 fully guaranteed at signing, and the max the package could be is $116 million. Pete, again, he's a nice player. That's really high pay. When I think of that, I'm thinking Chase, Jefferson, and Pierce is nice, but I don't think he's quite there.
Well. Jerry Jeudy sure looks like a deal, doesn't he? This is the thing. I hate getting the business of free agent wide receivers because this is what happens. You pay an astronomical amount, and it's really difficult to envision a scenario where he's going to pay off that contract, and maybe he'll prove it to be correct. But like Calvin Ridley last year is sort of the same feeling. And to the Jerry Jeudy point, Jerry Jeudy with the Browns in 2024 had a better season than Alec Pierce has ever had in the NFL, and he's making about $17 million a year. So yeah, it's tricky with that stuff. I don't like getting in the business of free agent receivers. Trades make a lot of sense. Andrew Berry's obviously been aggressive with that. We'll see how just attached the Jaguars are with Brian Thomas Jr. Some of that may just be trying to make the price go up a little bit, but we'll see. But this is why I've been saying all along, draft it. It will feel incredibly cheap if you take a top wide receiver and he pays off the way you need him to. If you do it at 6. Mekhi Lemon, Carnell Tate, you get one of those guys and they're really, really good. I mean, the Wan'Dale Robinson, he's 5'8". Wan'Dale Robinson is 5'8". He's being paid basically he's $78 million. Like this, it's just crazy to me. So like this is why you restraint. It's all about being smart with this stuff. Maybe there's a free agent that makes sense for the Browns. Maybe there's a situation that could be right. But, like, I just don't see it.
Well, and by and large, think about it. All of these free agents, somebody's letting them go. They were with another team who didn't see the value in paying what they wanted.
Well, I mean, that's the deal. Like, it's always a concern, and this is where I sit here and point at Rasheed Walker. If Rasheed Walker is really that good, why are the Packers just letting him walk? Left tackles are incredibly valuable, and they're content to let him walk out into the market. That is always a concern. These guys, the ones that are really good, never touch the market. Myles Garrett, good example. He's never going to see the light of day in terms of the market, and he knows it. And that's what should happen with players like that. And that's why it's so important to hit on those players in the draft or find them in trades or whatever, that you max out on return on investment and try to get the best deal you can as often as you can.
So the Colts, another wide receiver, they traded Michael Pittman, and he's coming to the AFC North. They are trading him to the Steelers. Steelers are going to have to rework his contract. That's the reason they paid him. So the Steelers improved their wide receiver room with Pittman. That's, again, nice receiver. I'm curious to see what exactly the financial details of his rework deal are going to be.
I like Michael Pittman a lot, so it annoys me that he's going to play for the Steelers, and they sort of seemingly borrowed a page out of Andrew Berry's playbook in this. They're getting a receiver that doesn't cost a whole lot, that's going to fill them a very nice role. He and DK Metcalf are a nice pairing. You know, you can sort of look at him and you can see why the Steelers would look at and say, this is a guy who plays Steelers-type football. Just a very competitive receiver, physical, all those elements. So, yeah, that's an annoying win to sort of see the Steelers get. I think it was a smart move on their part.
The other one, so Mike Evans is signing a 3-year, $20 million a year deal to go to the 49ers. And Evans, an older wide receiver, had a lot of banged up in injuries last year, but $20 million a year for Evans. If he can still play, that's a good big wide receiver.
Well, the 49ers have some weird issues to work out between losing Brandon Ayuk. They've got the Juan Jennings issue to sort of figure out. They've still got Ricky Pearsall. Mike Evans is just rock solid, and he seems to be aging well. He knows exactly why he's there. The expectations are there. So it's a good pairing in terms of the player at the right time with the team at the right time. So I think that he could do some real damage for them. But they've got some weird things to navigate in terms of they're basically saying Trent Williams is there to be had for a team. They haven't been able to work out a deal with him. So they've got some weird financial issues to work out. But look, I think this is a really smart move for both sides on that one.
All right, so let's go to the tight ends. Giants are signing former Ravens tight end Isaiah Likely, 3-year, $40 million contract. Could be as much as 40.5. Third highest tight end in the NFL. So now you got Dart and Neighbors to go with. Likely, John Harbaugh does that. Also, you alluded to this. The Chargers are signing Charlie Kolar, another Ravens tight end, 3-year, $24.3 million deal. Of the two, I'm with you. I thought Kolar fit more with the Browns. I think Likely's kind of redundant to what the Browns have in Fannin.
Yeah, I mean, Isaiah Likely, there was no reason for him to want to come here to basically be second fiddle for Harold Fannin. They paid very similar role. Yes, you could theoretically put them on the field at the same time, but it's not that effective, and it sort of limits what you can do offensively. Charlie Kolar is the one that hurts. The Browns need an inline tight end. They've got to replace David Njoku. Kolar hasn't been a big-time pass weapon, even though he had, I think, 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns at Iowa State. But he's a great run blocker. He's a tone setter in that element, and it seems like that would have been a great fit for what the Browns want to do. So it's very easy to understand why a Jim Harbaugh-led team would love to have a guy like that. So the Browns have their sort of space tight end in the Isaiah Likely mold with Fannin. They've still got to go do some work and find the guy that can play the Y, or are they going to wait and carry that into the draft? I would assume they're going to find somebody to fill that role. It's just a question of who.
All right, former NFL defensive back Tyvis Powell. Talking about the Browns quarterback situation for 2026.
You go with a quarterback in the 5th round or 4th round or whenever, one of those late rounds, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're essentially doing exactly what you did last year, and I think that's kind of insane to do, but I get it. You do need to make some change to the quarterback room, whether that's just bringing in a veteran, bringing in a regular or not a freshman, a rookie. Like, I get those things. But to me, the focal point has to be on probably Shedeur Sanders, like whoever's going to be the one. I mean, or unless you think Deshaun Watson can give you that chance, which to me, I just don't understand what you're doing with that. Like, if Deshaun Watson goes out and plays well, do you re-sign him? I doubt it. So, like, what would be the whole point of that? And then it's like getting you further away from where you need to be, or the truth, to know where your franchise is going. So I think, to me, you got to play the Shedeur, good or bad. You just got to play it and let it ride out that way.
Pete, I don't disagree with playing Shedeur, but I 100% agree with Deshaun Watson. If he goes out and plays, you're probably not going to re-sign him. What are your thoughts about, and we've talked about this guy, Geno Smith's starting to make more and more sense.
Yeah, bring it on. Look, my whole thing with Shedeur Sanders is I'm not against him. I just want him to go out and prove it against a real quarterback. And the husk of Deshaun Watson's not doing anything for anyone at this point. So if you bring in a guy like Geno Smith, who's played really good football, or Jacoby Brissett, or Jameis Winston, these are all guys you could come out there. And if Shedeur is able to beat those guys, you can at least sit there and go, that's a legitimate quarterback, and Shedeur was able to beat him out, which would give you confidence, give the locker room confidence that he's ready to make that step forward. I 1,000% agree with Tyvis's point on drafting a quarterback. You just did 2, and this is not a good class for quarterbacks. And maybe there's some weird scenario where there's some quarterback they just cannot resist in the 5th round, but you're arguably taking another quarterback in the same neighborhood in a worse class. There's less talent there. So use those assets to get other things. You clearly have other things to worry about. But I just want Shedeur to be put in a situation where he's got to go out there and fight for it. And I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. And if he can't win or he's not ready this second, the Browns can't just go into this season being like, well, we'll see you in 2027. Like, we can't keep doing this where we're like, well, we're just going to throw away another season. Like, you're selling your locker room, you're selling potential free agents that you are trying to win and play good football. So give them credibility in that locker room. Geno Smith's certainly my favorite option. I think he can win if you give him the right supporting cast. But, yeah, anything to make Shedeur get out there and win the job is ideal.
Are there any of the younger guys that you think would be beneficial at least to bring in? And I'm talking about Richardson, Murray, you know the names.
I have zero interest in Anthony Richardson. Unserious quarterback on a team that needs serious people. It took himself out of game for being tired. Like, I just cannot see Todd Monken going, yeah, this is the guy I want. For Kyler Murray, I just don't see why he'd want to come here. There are going to be options out there, I think, that just make more sense for him in terms of being successful. And he's got to try to recoup his career. So if he's just sort of looking at the landscape, I don't think he's going to look at the Cleveland Browns right now, because the Cleveland Browns have work to do. That's going to be the rest of free agency. That's going to be the draft. And for these free agents, it's hard to sell them on this vision of what could be. They need to see stuff now. So if you're Kyler Murray, you may look at Pittsburgh right now and go, okay, DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman and all these tight ends, yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. Or, going to the Colts if they're still waiting for Daniel Jones to sort of recoup from his injury and saying, I'll just go win the job. Like, there are just better situations for him.
Pete Smith and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Get ready for action like never before. The 2026 Mid-American Conference Basketball Tournament presented by Credit Union One returns to Rocket Arena March 11th through the 14th. Every shot, every steal, every buzzer beater, it all comes down to this. The best of the MAC men's and women's teams battle for glory, pride, and a ticket to the big dance. Feel the intensity, hear the roar. MAC Tournament Basketball. Be there. Tickets on sale now at rocketarena.com.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
What's up, Dave? Taylor from Columbus, and I'm just reading about the Max Crosby trade and just thinking, what type of trade could we get for Myles Garrett? If the Raiders were able to get 2 first-round draft picks, what type of deal could we get for Myles Garrett? I'm thinking it would have to be some type of high-end quarterback type of trade, not exactly like what the Browns gave up for Deshaun Watson, but something similar with a few first-round picks and multiple later-round picks. And I also wanted to throw out there that I'm a fan of Geno Smith. I think he's had the type of resurgent career that Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield had, and that he can thrive in the right system. So I wouldn't be opposed to the Browns checking in on Geno Smith and actually bringing him in, because we probably can get him on the cheap, like the Kyler Murray situation.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Pete, I imagine they could get 2 first-round picks and a good player, but I wouldn't trade. Here's the difference between the Browns and the Raiders. Browns have an elite-level defense. The Raiders didn't. You don't trade away the foundational piece of an elite unit. You just don't.
I'm working under the assumption that Andrew Berry proposed the rule to allow teams to trade more picks down the line so that some team can field him a real offer for Myles Garrett, because that's what it would take. He's like, if Max Crosby's worth 2 firsts, Myles Garrett is just substantially better. Like it's difficult to conceptualize just how impactful he is. I describe Myles Garrett the same way I describe J.J. Watt. They are franchise quarterback level players. In terms, they just happen to not play quarterback, and that's unfortunately what's hurting the Browns is their lack of offense. But they are that good in terms of what they do for you. So there's no upside in trading this guy, because one, he can play until he's 40. Khalil Mack just signed a $18 million deal, and he's about to be 36. And Myles Garrett has not sustained any of the injuries that Khalil Mack has. Like, he can play for a very, very, very long time. He's going to be there when the dome opens. He's going to be there for quite a while. So the accelerated clock that people have for him, I think, is unrealistic and unnecessary. So when it comes to that, I don't think the Browns have any interest in entertaining an offer for him. They'd have to eat an insane amount of dead cap to do it. And as far as Geno Smith goes, look, propaganda works. I'm happy to be here for it.
There you go. Tony Grossi on what he expects Browns to do in free agency.
I don't know if it'll be today or tomorrow, but I think their biggest purchase in free agency will come at one of those positions, either left tackle or
guard.
Center.
Or center.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the guards will come after that, or a guard will come after that. So, he's looking to, like the Bears, they picked up 3 veteran offensive linemen in one offseason, 2 by trade and 1 by free agency. So far, Andrew's got 1 by trade. So probably a couple veteran linemen in this first week.
They also got the guard. Obviously, that was recorded before they signed the guard. What do you do? You expect another offensive lineman? Do you expect a wide receiver? What type of veteran do you think they add before the draft? And I'm going to go into the draft after you answer that question.
Yeah, I think the focus is going to continue to be on the line of scrimmage for the offense, and that includes that inline tight end. They need to find somebody that can fill that role. I don't think they just want to wait, because right now, other than Harold Fannin, it's like Blake Whitehart and Brendan Bates. Like, they need to get more credibility there. But yeah, I mean, they've still got to do plenty of work on the offensive line. And then the other spot I look at is linebacker. Devin Bush is obviously out the door. Quincy Williams would be a fantastic fit because he's a really good coverage linebacker. Caden Ellis, who just played for Rutenberg, is more of a run-oriented linebacker. Nevertheless, could be a fit there. So those are kind of the spots where it makes a whole lot of sense, where holes have just been created, or they are continuing issues that are sitting there. Wide receiver is the one where, yeah, they could do something. Maybe they go and find a way to get Shaheed. But overall, I still think that's a trade or draft play more than anything.
So if say they get, and I'll say they sign a left tackle, say they sign Rasheed Walker, is there a way that at 6 they can take the best defensive player? Because this is a defensive-heavy draft. Is there a way that they can maneuver it so that if an edge rusher they really like or Caleb Downs is sitting there, they take that guy at 6? Or do you think that's not on the board just based on what they need?
Well, I mean, my disagreement with it is I just don't think the best player on the board is going to be a defensive player. That's regardless of any of them. Like David Bailey's there. Reuben Bain is there. Caleb Downs is a fantastic football player. We've got to see what's going on with the medical with him, but great player. My evaluation, my belief is that the wide receivers, and you can be in the Carnell Tate business, I don't care. Mine is Mekhi Lemon. To me, those guys are going to be better as prospects than the guys that are going to be available on defense. So unless the Browns are going to do something like trade for Brian Thomas Jr. inside Rasheed Walker and all these other things where they just eliminate all these things, they're like, sure, we need a slot defender, so we're going to draft Caleb Downs. I still think their best play is going to be take an offensive player at that first pick, whether it be a tackle or wide receiver. And then obviously everybody's going to sit there and hope that they can somehow trade down before doing either one.
Do you think is it a value that they place on one? I can't figure out why Andrew Berry hasn't taken a wide receiver before the 3rd round. And you go back in history, and the Browns just haven't spent first-round picks on wide receivers.
Well, I mean, they haven't done one since Corey Coleman. And unfortunately for Andrew Berry, they just haven't had picks. You know, obviously, you trade all those picks with Deshaun Watson, and the picks they've made in the first round, Jedrick Wills, Greg Newsome, Mason Graham, all entirely reasonable picks, positions that matter, premium spots, but those are your 3. So, I mean, there's just haven't been a whole lot of swings in that. Even when you get into the 2nd round, obviously it gets a little bit stranger when 2 of those picks are linebackers. But yeah, to your point, they're due. It's time to pay up on that. And the contracts you're seeing show just how valuable that position is. Now, it's just entirely a question of how the Browns evaluate this thing compared to somebody like me, where do they think the value is there at potentially 6 or moving back a little bit, or do they think the value is like 24 and moving up or something along those lines?
All right, we're sitting here early day 1 of free agency. Give me a dream scenario that you come away with free agency and the draft with 624, and you can give me a free agent if you want, or a trade. Give me the pieces that you think, man, if they can put this together, they're getting close to where they need to be.
Well, yeah, as far as the draft goes, I would love nothing more than to come away with Mekhi Lemon at 6, Caleb Lomu at 24, the Utah left tackle, which is why I'm not necessarily jumping overboard for Monroe Freeling at 6. I think Caleb Lomu is right there in terms of ability. And then if I could have my druthers at 39, if he's still there, I would jump all over Max Ahanichor, the other offensive tackle from Arizona State. Put him in the pipeline. Titus Howard is not here for long. You can shuffle those guys around. And if he's not there, somebody like Chase Basantis, the guard from Texas A&M, would be great. And then as far as free agency goes, getting Luke Fortner would be pretty good right now, given the center sort of dearth. I don't want the Browns to sort of have nothing other than Luke Whippler coming off of injury and then the draft to sort of address that. So that is more pressing to me. And I've mentioned any number of times Braxton Jones is of interest to me. I'm very nervous about paying a ton of money to Rasheed Walker because it'd be basically just doing the same thing with Zion Johnson. I think at some point this is going to catch up with them where they have a whole bunch of aspirational contracts that just add up to bad business.
Yeah, that's fair. Adam Schefter reporting that Tua is going to sign a 1-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. So it looks like Tua's headed to play for Kevin Stefanski for a season, which not a surprise because they're not sure the health of Michael Penix. Again, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, I mean, they have to cover their bases. Michael Penix, to this point, has unfortunately had a bunch of injuries, and he hasn't developed the way they need him to. And the Falcons are in a position where they need to win football games now. They could have, perhaps should have been a playoff team last year. They had a surge at the end of the year, but they can't wait around and hope that Michael Penix is good. I don't know if Tua is going to be great, but they've got a really strong supporting cast, really good offensive line. Bijan Robinson's terrific. They're going to keep their tight end, who's on the franchise tag. They've got tremendous weapons around that. They brought in a couple guys today that can help them. The pressure's on, so they want to win football games. They want to win the division this year.
Pete Smith, Orange and Brown Report is always great stuff. Appreciate the time, the insight. Thanks very much, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Pete Smith, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Report, as you can tell, always really good and insightful Brown stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Emory Hunt from CBS Sports, straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day, put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Dan Orlovsky talking about where he sees Kyler Murray signing.
If you're Kyler Murray and you're going to get released and you're looking at the landscape, where else would you want to go that even sniffs Minnesota? Don't want to go to Pittsburgh, don't want to go to the Jets, don't want to go to Cleveland, not going to go to Atlanta. So at the places that are options in Miami, Minnesota is by far the best option. And then if you're Minnesota, who sniffs Kyler? Malik Willis, because he's in division, is not going to go there, okay? He's not going to sign a free agency. So Geno Smith, I love Geno, but you'd much rather have Kyler. Kirk Cousins, got a lot of love and respect for Kirk. You'd much rather have Kyler Murray. So we don't have to overthink this. Kyler Murray is going to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings this season, unless J.J. McCarthy unseats him.
So welcome in Emory Hunt from CBS Sports. Emory, appreciate you joining us. It would be really interesting if the Vikings pursue Kyler Murray that hard because of J.J. McCarthy.
Well, it makes sense when you think about how this team is already set up. Very good offensive line, explosive weapons at wide receiver and at tight end, an elite defense that gets you the football back. If you're Kyler Murray, and I slightly disagree with Dan Orlovsky just a little bit on the Jets, because the Jets in Minnesota, to me, seem like the best setup for a guy like Kyler Murray. Offensively speaking, for the Jets, because of what they have along the offensive line, the three-headed monster in the backfield, they're explosive in the backfield. They got some good weapons at wide receiver. You expect the defense to get better, but Minnesota seems like the most ideal spot because of both sides of the ball being where they are, they're balanced, and on top of that, they play indoors.
Yeah, that does make sense. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason real quickly.
Hey, Dave, Rick from Cleveland. Been a minute, brother. I wish they would put all this Malik Willis and Kyler Murray stuff to rest. For example, Malik Willis wants $30 million a year. What, are you going to have $80 million in the quarterback room? Man, that's ridiculous. I say we give Shedeur a shot this year, see what we got in him, and we'll go from there next year in the draft. Number two, we need to come out of this draft with that left tackle from Georgia, Monroe Freeling. We need him, and I would sign Tyler Linderbaum, and there's two spots on the offensive line good for the next 10 years. Give me your thoughts, brother, and I'll be in touch more often. Love you, brother.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Emory, so Linderbaum signed within the past little bit, 3 years, $81 million, so $27 million a year with the Raiders, 60 of it guaranteed. Willis signed earlier with the Dolphins. Freeling, I like Freeling, and I think he's rising up draft boards, and he's a true left tackle, which kind of distinguishes him from a couple of the other guys early in the draft.
Yeah, he is my number one tackle. He was that before the combine. I graded offensive tackles, I want to say early February. So I was done with that position. I was like, man, this guy Freeling is the number one guy in my opinion. He's 6'7" with great knee bend. Like you said, he's the perfect left tackle. So that would be a fantastic pick for the Browns, whether it's at 6, 24, or whatever. That's the type of player you kind of want along the offensive line because he has the tackle experience, the left tackle experience. He's coming from a premier program that seems to produce very good offensive linemen in the Georgia Bulldogs, and I like that he's a young player. So he's going to still be able to get better and grow as he gets acclimated to the pro game. So he still has that upside potential. We're not talking about one of these 24, 25-year-old rookies that who have their ceiling and their floor are on the same place, you know?
Yeah, the other thing, and do you think this factors into it? Keep in mind, Todd Monken knows Kirby Smart. He was his offensive coordinator. Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator for Kirby Smart. He can find out anything he wants to know about Monroe Freeling. And Freeling is a guy that, as big as he is, his feet move pretty well. Tell me what you saw about Freeling and also the connection to Todd Monken in that program.
Yeah, Monken can get all the intel, the real intel, because he was there, he coached there, and, you know, he has that great relationship. So he's going to get the most ideal, accurate intel on the makeup, the off-the-field stuff, what type of worker he is. He's going to get all of those good things. In terms of what I saw on film, the hands, the feet are always in unison. And it's teach tape how his hands stay inside. He's able to extend out for these pass rushers. And when he's in the run game, he's able to get good lift off and move his feet well, so he's getting movement off the spot. So he has a technical aspects that you want of his game. He has a youth on his side, and he has a size that helps him step right in and play pro game. And he's been playing against pros at Georgia based on who he's gone against in practice on his own team, but also what he did this past season as their full-time starter.
All right, so let's look at some of the early signings that have occurred. The Dolphins, I mentioned this one earlier because of the voicemail, signing Malik Willis, 3 years, $67.5 million, 45 of it guaranteed. So, for a quarterback that you view as a starter, that's not a bad contract.
Not at all, and it gives Malik Willis a chance to get another swing at the bat pretty soon. So if he goes out there to Miami, outperforms this deal, and Miami looks like they made the right move by moving on from Tua Tagovailoa to go with an ascending Malik Willis, then in 2 years we'll see this number get expanded and extended. So this is a great deal for him, great deal for the Dolphins, and I like the fit too because he has that familiarity with Jeff Hafley, defensive-minded head coach, knows exactly what type of player they do not want to face week in, week out, and that's a dynamic mobile quarterback. And so when you have that chance to make your starter, which you don't want to face, and you know other defensive players, coordinators hate facing this guy, you go out and grab him. So that's why they went out and grabbed him right away. And you look at what Malik Willis did the last time we saw him play in Green Bay. I mean, he was just getting better and better, stepped in on short notice, played really well. So when you look at that over the course of a season, you expect him to have a very productive, good season in Miami because, one, he's talented, he's ascending, but also I like the makeup of Malik Willis. I spoke with him when he was in Tennessee. I just like the person and the awareness and the perspective that he has. So I think he's going to do fine down there in Florida.
All right, so wide receiver Alec Pierce has agreed to remain with the Colts. 4-year, $114 million deal. He will be the highest free agent wide receiver in NFL history, $84 million of it guaranteed, 60 fully guaranteed at signing, and the max package could be $116. That, and again, Alec Pierce is a really good wide receiver. Man, I don't know if I'd go that high.
I'll say this. As the cap continues to grow and the numbers continue to get bigger and bigger, we do find ourselves saying this a lot, like, man, is that a lot of money? But 2 years from now, it'll be like, man, they're paying them peanuts because the cap just keep growing and growing and growing. And so, but you're right. It just, I guess when we think of, and he's a good receiver, don't get me wrong, but when you think of that number, you're thinking of the Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases,
yeah.
Those guys. It just seems weird to get that for Pierce, but good for him. Generational money, and I'm glad he's able to stay in Indy.
All right, so former Seahawks running back, MVP of the Super Bowl, Kenneth Walker is headed and is signing with the Chiefs. So he lands with the Chiefs. Again, Kansas City going to be without Patrick Mahomes for a little bit. They've really been looking for a running back for a while. They got a good one now.
Oh, they got a great one. And here's the thing. Now it puts that pick at number 9 really in business, because we saw them move on from Trent McDuffie, and now they went ahead and signed, Kenneth Walker. So when you look at this team, it's like, okay, what are they planning to do at number 9? What's going to be the play? Where are they going to go? And now that they've taken essentially Jeremiah Love off the table, does he fall? Does he go higher? Do they trade out that pick? But you're right. They needed a running back. They needed a game breaker at that position. And when they were explosive in all 3 facets: offense, defense, special teams. But on offense, they were explosive at receiver, quarterback with Mahomes, and also in the backfield.
All right, so Patriots are signing Ravens defensive end Draymond Jones. Local kid here. He went to St. Ignatius High School, Ohio State. Browns were interested in him before he signed with the Seahawks before this contract. So they needed some defensive linemen. Patriots get a good one as well. Has anything surprised you so far? I mean, it's really early going. Anything surprised you with the free agent signings?
The rumors or reports that suggest that the Falcons are going after aggressively Tua Tagovailoa gives them a second lefty at quarterback if that happens, with Michael Penix on the roster. And, this is a former first-round pick in Michael Penix, and I know he's coming off of an injury. So you wonder, okay, number one, how healthy is he? And number two, what's the long-term plan for him, or do you still have a long-term plan? You just want Tua right now, and what that deal will look like for Tua. I know Miami's paying the bulk of it, and you talk about dead cap, man. That's a lot of dead cap. I think it's $59 million that would be if he's able to sign with the Falcons and the Dolphins pick up the tab or whatnot. So that surprised me, and a lot of it is due to the fact that we don't know how healthy Michael Penix will be to start the season, if he's going to be able to start the season. And you have Tua coming in potentially. And what does that mean for Penix long-term in Atlanta, whom you drafted in round 1? Is he on the same exit plan as J.J. McCarthy? So that'll be something that's interesting to watch. But that's the one that really has surprised me so far. It didn't even happen yet, but the reports are that it may happen, and therefore it's still surprising.
Is there somebody you think Andrew Berry has in his sights, either free agency or trade, that's still on the board?
I feel like the obvious one are the connections to Todd Monken via his old team, the Baltimore Ravens. So I would keep an eye on the Isaiah Likely one. And I think that could make a lot of sense as well, too, with the Browns, because you don't have David Njoku. And so now you want to have those multiple tight end sets, and Likely with a Harold Fannin partnership would be tremendous. And it would kind of steal some of the thunder away from Baltimore, steal some of the thunder away from Pittsburgh, because they, for whatever reason, don't feel like using Pat Freiermuth, who's a very good tight end, and sometimes they forget he's on the team. So I think if they are able to grab Isaiah Likely, Browns may be atop the division in terms of having the best duo at the tight end position.
Emory Hunt from CBS Sports, and I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns. We'll talk a little bit about the AFC North as well. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Emory Hunt from CBS Sports. Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi on if he'd consider trading Myles Garrett.
Max Crosby went for 2 number 1s this year. What would Myles Garrett go for?
I think you could get at least 2 number 1s and a player who might have been a former number 1
Not
pick.
3 number 1s
for
Myles Garrett?
Yeah.
Would you do 3 number 1s for Myles Garrett, Chris?
Yeah, I probably would at
Aaron.
this point. Sure.
Yeah, if a team had like 2 number 1s this year, you'd get those 2.
And then number 1 next year, would you, as the Browns, would you give up Myles Garrett for 3 number 1s?
Yeah. I said it last year. I'll say it again.
Emory, it's a debate that goes on, and the Browns are in a little bit different spot than the Raiders because that defense was so good. The Raiders, the defense wasn't, top 10, top 5. So that you have an elite unit. If you give Myles Garrett away, you're going to fall back to the middle of the pack.
Right, and the goal is to make your strength stronger. And I feel like Max Crosby kind of already had one foot out the door, and he just didn't feel like he wanted to be there. You don't get that sense from Myles Garrett. And on top of the fact Myles Garrett is an elite player, he's better than Max Crosby, who's also a very good to elite player. But Myles Garrett is the Cleveland Browns. He's the identity, and you want to make that strength stronger. I'm also not in the business of getting rid of good players. Even though the enticing thing that we love to talk about, the draft and the mystery box of first-round picks, but you still have to make good picks, and guys have to pan out. And things have to go right for that first-round pick to hit. And even though you may have 5 of them, at the end of the day, you still are rolling the dice on whether or not these guys will remain healthy, hit their ceiling, outplay their draft status even in the first round. And when you talk about a future Hall of Famer, I am not getting rid of Myles Garrett. I don't care how many first-round picks.
I'm with you. The other thing, so Isaiah Likely off the board. He's going to sign with the Giants, going to John Harbaugh. So we'll continue to monitor that. Browns beat reporter Darryl Rotter with his feel for how the Browns are approaching free agency in the early going.
I don't think they're big game hunting in the wide receiver room. They're obviously checking in on just about every quarterback that they're interested in that's available, because that room obviously is not set by any stretch of the imagination. Offensive line is, I think, where their primary focus is. And then, I'll be honest with you, Andy, a lot of it's depth, like on the defensive side of the ball. Like, let's not forget, they got some needs there. They need a nickel corner. They need some depth corner help. They need some safety depth help. Whatever happens with Devin Bush, like they may have, if they can't re-sign him, they got to replace him, right? Like, so I kind of feel like outside of like offensive line, all right, if they aren't able to reel in a big fish there, then I think you're going to see a lot of second and third and fourth tier signings by the Browns in subsequent days.
Yeah, you know what, Emory, I don't have a problem with that. You don't want to overpay is the main thing. And Andrew Berry's been pretty good with that, minus the Deshaun Watson contract, which we can debate if that was him or the owner.
Well, and here's the thing. When you look at what Darryl said, the offensive line, there are 2 guys in particular that would fit the mold of helping his offensive line right away without having to overpay, and that's Elijah Vera Tucker and also Zion Johnson. Both guys are starters. You hope that Elijah Vera Tucker can stay healthy, knock on wood. That's been the knock for him. So that one will probably come not as a premium cost, but it's a risk that you would want to take because of, first-round pedigree and a guy that can really play. Zion Johnson has gotten better. He was a former first-round pick. May not be ready to break the bank just yet, but probably wants another quick bite at the apple. So, therefore, he probably won't come at cost. But both guys could be your starters right now at guard if you want to keep Titus Howard at tackle. And now that helps your offensive line. But he's dead on about the depth on the defensive side. People forget depth is key. And if you're going to build depth, this is where you get some solid depth pieces within free agency. Because you're not going to swing big at wide receiver. You're not going to swing big. The big offensive lineman you would have swung big at is already gone, at Tyler Linderbaum. So now, you have to focus on, okay, where can we plug holes with solid players without overspending, and then focus the attention on the draft.
All right, so let's turn our attention to the draft for a minute. What do you think a dream scenario for Andrew Berry is with the first 3 picks? So it's 6, 24, 39. If he can come out of there with, if you want to go specific players, great, positions or guys that really could upgrade this roster.
Ideally speaking, if I'm Andrew Berry and I'm looking at these 3 selections, 6, 24, and 39, 6, the best player available, the 6th best player in the draft. By far. By your board, who is number 6? That's the guy. 24, best offensive lineman. 39, best wide receiver. I think that's the ideal scenario. And so, therefore, you land an impact playmaker, a starter at a position of need, a starter/key contributor at another position of need, and then therefore I feel like you can kind of, kill two birds with one stone. Because at number 6, man, I say this all the time. When people say, would you trade down or would you trade out? I was like, man, if you have on average every year 5,000 eligible draft prospects in every draft, right? You mean to tell me I get to get the 6 best out of 5,000? That's hard for me to move off of, and so I think you go best player available on your board, offensive tackle, and then wide receiver in that order.
All right, before I let you go, how close are the Browns to kind of turning things around and being a factor in the AFC North?
Very close. I mean, let's work back forward, right? They won 2 games to end the season, both against divisional opponents. One was fighting for a playoff spot. I was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Bengals are still the Bengals. They had Joe Burrow and those guys out there trying to win, right? So they got those 2 wins. Then you start looking back over the season. You look at, man, they had the Tennessee Titans game, so that's 3 wins we're counting right now. That would have been now 6-11. They had the Buffalo game, that's 7-10. We go earlier in the season, they could have beat the Vikings. Now we're looking at 8-9. So they're not that far off. A few players here and there, and steadily growing draft class that they had last year. The Browns could be right there in the mix because they compete well. They tend to frustrate all the teams within a division. And if you're looking at this on a trending scale, they're trending upwards as some teams are getting older, i.e. the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Bengals never figure out their defense. They don't care about defense out there in Cincinnati. And the Ravens, you got to figure out what they are. They still have Lamar Jackson. So as long as he's healthy, they're going to win the division, and he's going to go to the playoffs. But there's still some questions in there. There's a chance to at least steal a game from Baltimore. You could have had that game in Cleveland when Shador came in, cold off the bench. They were in that game too. So the Browns are not that far off. That's why I'm excited about the Browns. I think they do have a lot to build on, and the fans should have a lot of hope going into the season.
Emory Hunt, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Emory. Emory Hunt, make sure you check him out. Always really good and insightful coverage from CBS Sports. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.